All right, we are looking for the rule using the tables that we've been given. So a rule has to be true for every pair of coordinates x, y in a table or a graph. So the coefficient, remember, is the one that comes before a variable. So something, some number times x plus a constant, which is a number by itself. So a linear rule will create a straight line on a graph. Y equals something coefficient times x plus something constant. Okay, so there is a way to figure this out. The coefficient of x will be the increase of y as x increases by 1. So let me spell this out. So here you can see that x is going from -2, and then plus 1 gets to -1, plus 1 gets to 0. So as x increases by 1, then we can work out the increase in y, and that's going to give us our coefficient. So here we can see that because we know this, that x increases by 1, then we can work out from -2, skip over 0 to 1, that's actually adding 2. From 1 to 3, that's adding 2. So each time they're adding 2, which is going to give us this linear relationship, then that means that 2 is our coefficient of x. So it'll be 2 times x plus, and then here's the other kicker, if we're looking for the constant will be the value of y when x is 0. So that's just plain old x is 0, and at that point y is 3. So there it is. So we've got our rule there. So let's try that in real life. Again, you've got to have x moving by increasing by 1. -2, it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, as long as it's increasing by 1 and no other. So that's what we have in place. So let's look here. So find the rule for these tables. Is x increasing by 1? Yes, yes, yes. So if we know that x is increasing by 1, we can move ahead. So the first thing we want to find is the coefficient of x. And we want to find that by the increase of y when we know x increases by 1. So we know x increases by 1. So from -8 to -5, we are going positive 3. From -5 to -2, that's another positive 3. From -2 to -1, look, I wrote a positive just to be sure. So we're looking at a 3 here. So we're finding that, let's see, y equals our coefficient here of x, we don't know what this constant is yet, equals 3. 3x plus mystery. Well, mystery no more, because we know that the constant will be the value of y when x is 0. So looking on our chart here, when x is 0, y is -2. And to make real sense out of that, we would put 3x minus 2, and then we have a rule for that table. We want to find the rule for this table. Same thing, we want to have y as our subject. So y equals some coefficient times x plus a constant. Okay, so what do we have here? It looks like we have, again, y is increasing by 1, so we're in good shape there. But then, what is our coefficient? Our coefficient is what's happening here. Sorry, did I say y? I meant x is increasing by 1. So the y-coordinate, -5 to -7, we're actually going -2. From -7 to -9, minus 2. So each of these is -2. So our coefficient is actually going to be -2 times x plus mystery. And now, as you know, the constant, which is then in that box, will be the value of y when x is 0, but we don't have a value of x being 0 in this case, so we're going to have to be a little bit clever about that. So what we're going to do is substitute. So we know we've got some coordinates here who are true, and we use those to figure out what our missing constant is going to be. So if we use these coordinates, and y is -5, and we have -2 times, in this case, 3, we're going to find out what that coefficient needs to be to make this equation true. So -5 equals, -2 times 3 is -6 plus something. So you can add 6 to both sides, that'll always work. And adding 6 to both sides, let's do it that way, will give us box by itself, and that gives us a +1. So that means that our constant, oh man, that says constant, is positive 1. And if you doubt it, you can always go back and substitute negative 5 equals negative 6 plus 1. That works. If you further doubt it, which you're allowed to doubt, go in and use our new rule, and that rule is y equals negative 2x plus 1, and substitute something else. So let's grab 4 and negative 7, shall we? Yes, let's. Okay, fine. So we'll take, what was it? Y was negative 7? Yeah. Y is negative 7. We'll substitute that in there. And then negative 2 times, what was x when y is negative 7? 4 plus 1. So negative 7 equals negative 2 times 4 is negative 8 plus positive 1. Oh my gosh. It's true. So we've got ourselves a rule. So when we're presented with a graph, we can just put that onto a table, construct a table, from the xy values that we see, remembering always that x comes first and y comes second. So let's make a graph of what we got. We have x is negative 1, and where that happens, y is negative 3. We have the next point where x is 0 and y is negative 2. Our next point, x is 1 and y is negative 1. Our next point, x is 2 and y is 0. And our final point, x is 3 and y is 1. And again, we're going to check and just make sure that these are each increasing by 1. And if they're all increasing by 1, then we can work towards our linear equation. And that will be the case. So now, we know that we want to find y equals the coefficient of x plus a constant. So y equals, the coefficient of x is the increase of y when x is moving by 1. And in this case, actually we see that y is also just moving by 1. From negative 3 to negative 2 is 1. From negative 2 to negative 1 is 1. From negative 1 to 0 is 1. And from 0 to 1 is positive 1. So the coefficient of x is 1. But then we've got to find that constant. The constant is, when x is 0, y is our constant. So we don't have to write 1x. So we know that 1x is x. And then if we're going to add negative 2, we're actually subtracting 2. So our rule, having constructed this table of xy values from the graph, is that y is equal to x minus 2. There you go.